Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. It's great to be back with you. Today is August 2nd, 2015. Wow, how the time is flying by. I can't believe it's already August. Summer's almost over. Pretty ridiculous. Anyway, it's great to be back with you, as usual. My name is Mac Worley III, and this is On the Move. This is the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights, and I want to thank you first and foremost for joining us today. Today's episode is titled Planned Parenthood, Businesses Who Ban Guns, and we have a special guest coming on the show. His name is Steve Kerbel. This is episode 81 of On the Move Show. By the way, Steve Kerbel is the Libertarian candidate for the the presidency. He's a candidate, one of many candidates that they're putting forward here, and I'm looking forward to speaking to him. He'll be coming on the show at about 8:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 5:15 p.m. I'm sorry, I mix that up. 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 5:15 Pacific Standard Time. Sorry about that. Anyway, first and foremost, I just want to say, if you haven't done so, please go ahead and follow us on Spreaker. That's Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. I'd appreciate it if you follow us there. We broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We discuss all things liberty, guns, government, things along those lines. I want to give a shout out to the 405media.com for simulcasting us. Our featured topics today are going to be Planned Parenthood profiting from the sale of fetal tissue, and we're going to talk about this issue. This has been going on in the news. There's been a lot of hidden camera videos that have been released. I want to give you guys my thoughts on that, and I'd love to hear from you guys on that as well. Also, I want to cover 6 companies that don't want your business if you're armed. I also want to find out what you guys think. I'll give you my opinion on it, and we'll discuss it. Should businesses who ban guns on their premises, should they be held legally liable for any kind of injury or death in their establishments to the patrons, especially if a firearm could have prevented it? So allowing somebody to defend themselves could have prevented that injury. Should they be held responsible for the fact that they've disarmed their patrons? Anyway, I also want to give some suggestions to the GOP in the upcoming election and whatnot, as far as where they're going to find a nominee. And also, lastly here, I want to talk about some hilarious new ways to protest that I've stumbled across this week, and I've got to cover them. I think they're excellent. I think it's inventive. We're going to cover many other topics in the news. As usual, you can join the conversation today. Feel free. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. You can message us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can like us on, you can get us on Twitter @OnTheMoveShow. So anything you'd like to discuss is on the table. Feel free to give us a call. One last time, that number is 360-450-5625. Our MacPack phone lines are open, so feel free to light them up. Don't forget to check us out at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. Again, follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. Okay, so without further ado, let me go ahead and enter into the first segment of the show. We like to call it the Weekly Defender.
And now it's time for Weekly Defender. You have the right to defend your life, the right to defend your family, and the right to defend your freedom.
All right, this is my favorite segment of the show. This is where we report about armed citizens in the news who have used their firearms to defend their family, their property, and themselves, something along those lines. Our first Weekly Defender we found on ABC 13 News, or ABC13.com, and this is a story about a pastor who shot an intruder at a Baytown church. And I'll read the article, and then I'll go ahead and play the clip for you. Again, this is in Baytown, Texas. A would-be burglar messed with the wrong church and pastor Tuesday. This is July 28th, 2015. Baytown police say the man kicked in the door of the Church of New Beginnings early and attempted to rob it. We have church break-ins in the city of Baytown, said Pat Holmes, but ours had never been broken into. Unfortunately, today was the day. So I'm going to go ahead and play the clip here.
Him to stop twice, and he didn't. So, fear for my life, I did what I had to do.
But we begin with an Eyewitness News exclusive interview with the Baytown pastor who shot a suspected burglar at his church. Welcome to Live at 5, everyone. I'm Art Rascone.
And I'm Melanie Lawson. Pastor Benny Holmes talked exclusively with Eyewitness News about what he had to do to protect his church.
And we've also been able to get a hold of surveillance video of that break-in. Eyewitness News reporter Tracy Clemens live now in Baytown with the latest on this story. Tracy?
Yeah, when that would-be robber busted through the door here at the Church of New Beginnings, he messed with the wrong church and the wrong pastor. Pastor Benny Holmes was packing the gospel and a gun, and he did not hesitate to use either of them.
We have church break-ins here in the city of Baytown, and ours has never been broken into, but unfortunately, today was today.
Around 6:15 this morning, a man broke into the Church of New Beginnings on North Alexander in Baytown. In this surveillance video, you can see him busting the door in. Little did he know that Pastor Benny Holmes was sleeping inside and that he was strapped.
This was a robbery. He broke in the door, had laptops in his hand.
Pastor Holmes told Eyewitness News exclusively that he woke up when he heard someone moving around in the church and he grabbed his gun.
I commanded him to stop twice, and he didn't. So, fear for my life, I did what I had to do.
Baytown police say Pastor Holmes shot the man in the right shoulder. They identified him as 27-year-old Lee Marvin Blue Jr. The most surprising part of this may be what happened while Blue was laying on the ground in his own blood.
I led him through the sinner's prayer while he was on the floor. He repeated the sinner's prayer after me.
Blue has an extensive criminal history dating back to 2005. It includes trespassing, burglary of a vehicle, and assault, just to name a few. He was life-flighted to Memorial Hermann with non-life-threatening injuries. He is charged with burglary of a building. If you are wondering where you've seen Pastor Benny Holmes before, he is the same pastor who held a woman at gunpoint when he caught her trying to steal UPS packages off of his front porch in September. And he held her there until police were able to get there and arrest her. We'll have more on this at 6, but for now, reporting live in Baytown, Tracy Clemens, 13 Eyewitness News.
All right,
so to stop.
Started playing again. Okay, so that was our first Wicked Offender. Our next Wicked Offender is something that we found on theblaze.com, and this is a story where a concealed carry permit holder protected his family after a suspect opened fire in the direction of a woman and a 1-year-old boy. I believe it was his family. Let me go ahead and read the story. This is on The Blaze. A 62-year-old man, by the way, this is theblaze.com. Jason Howerton wrote the story on July 28, 2015. A 62-year-old man was stopped by a concealed carry permit holder after he drew 2 handguns and shot at 4 people, including a 1-year-old boy, during an argument with a woman in a Cincinnati neighborhood on Sunday night, police said. As Thomas McCary argued with the woman, her brother, identified as Patrick Ewing, I'm assuming that's not the famous basketball player, but maybe it is, approached to make sure everything was okay. That's when the police say McCary pulled out a .38 caliber handgun and squeezed off 3 shots at the brother. Ewing, a concealed carry permit holder, drew his firearm and returned fire. McCary was hit once in the leg and retreated into his house. However, the attacker soon returned with an additional firearm and fired more shots toward the woman, her 1-year-old son, and another man. In an effort to draw the shooter's attention away from his family, Ewing fired several more shots at McCary as cover, which allowed the victims to escape into their home. Police arrested McCary after the 62-year-old man showed up at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center for treatment. He was in jail by early Monday morning. So, again, another situation where somebody uses a firearm defensively. I mentioned this last week, and I'm going to start adding this into every time we have this conversation. Every single time that somebody uses a firearm defensively in this country, which is hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times per year. I believe there was a University of Florida study, if I'm trying to remember correctly here, I think it was around 2 million times a year people use firearms defensively, if I'm remembering that accurately. Now, maybe I'm misremembering, but I know it was over 1 million. So, anyway, let's just take it down to the lowest. Let's say hundreds of thousands of times per year. Every time this happens, every single time somebody uses a firearm defensively is potentially a life saved. So when you hear the left say that if we can get guns out of the hands of criminals and just save just one life, do it for the kids, just remember that every single time that you've taken guns away from somebody is potentially millions, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times where somebody could have saved their own life, but they were denied. And anyway, we personally here at the show, we love hearing about how law-abiding citizens use their firearms to protect themselves. You have a right to defend your life and the lives of your family. You have a right to defend your property, and you have a right to defend your freedom. We at On The Move, we support your rights. If you have a story about how you lawfully defended yourself, or you would like to comment on one of these stories, we would love to hear from you. Give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and cut to a quick commercial break. When we get back, we're going to be probably getting a phone call here from Steve Kerbel. As I said, Steve is the Libertarian Party candidate for the presidential race 2016, and we're going to pick his brain on the issues, talk about a whole bunch of issues. I want to see what are some of the issues that he thinks are the most important ones that we're facing right now, and I want to give you guys an opportunity to get to know him. An actual third-party candidate. You're not going to hear very many third-party candidates on the news, getting 45 minutes or so of airtime to really hash out where they stand. And I think you guys will be surprised. I think because when I first started becoming a libertarian, which by the way, I'm a little L libertarian. I wouldn't consider myself a big L libertarian. And for those of you who don't know, big L basically means that you are for the party. You're a libertarian as far as associating yourself with the party. Now, I do associate with myself with the party, but I'm not married to it. I will go after and vote for the candidate that I think will be the best for the job. That's just how I roll. So I don't care if it's a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party. It doesn't matter to me. If I think they're the best person for the job, the party politics don't really much matter to me. However, if you are concerned about the upcoming election and you don't think that there are any quality candidates, first of all, I think you're not looking hard enough. There are tons and tons of people in this presidential race. We're going to get to it when we get to the GOP suggestions that I have and what I think might help the GOP. But I think it's so important that we listen and pay attention to the Libertarian Party because they are, in my opinion, the party of the most freedom. So I'm really looking forward to this interview. Anyway, we'll be back after these messages, guys. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore. With the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Natasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. So at this point, while we're waiting on our guest to call in, I want to read a story here about after the Lafayette shooting. Many of us are aware of the shooting that just took place in Lafayette at the movie theater. After Lafayette shooting, there has been an interest in concealed carry that has been surging. Apparently, there has been a lot more applications applying for concealed carries. And let me just go ahead and read a little clip here from bearingarms.com here, a little section from an article written by Bob Owens on July 30th, 2015. The attack by mentally ill mass shooter in the Grand 16 movie theater in Lafayette, Louisiana, killing 2 and wounding 9, has only reinforced the truism that the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Despite cries from the anti-gun media that more guns will only contribute to more violence, a claim not borne by facts, as gun sales have surged and violent crime has diminished, Louisiana residents are responding to the senseless act of violence by purchasing more firearms for concealed carry. Area gun sales outlets may be doing a brisk business of late, but a few store representatives were willing to discuss it on Monday. Tim Heisen, president of Barney's Police Supplies, was the exception. Heisen, a former police officer, said gun sales typically rise in the wake of high-profile crimes, such as Thursday's shooting at the Grand 16 Theater in Lafayette that left 2 people dead and 9 wounded. That's been the case at his Caracano, I think is how you say it, Caracano-based site, which principally serves law enforcement but does about 20% of its business with the public. There's always been a spike in sales over the years anytime you have situations similar to this, Heisen said, citing the increase in gun sales after Hurricane Katrina and Rita in 2005 and news about serial killers or rapists. From what I see, it's a similar situation here. People want to protect themselves and their families. What people saw in the Grand 16 was that anyone with a handgun and decent training might have been able to oppose the murderer. So, I happen to agree. I think that it's incredibly important that we arm ourselves, and I think that many people see this, and that's why we have an instance just like this where people see a crime that happened where if somebody was armed, if anybody was armed in that movie theater, somebody could have took that guy out before he was able to hurt other people, and could have possibly prevented, other people being injured. Maybe it's unlikely that they could have prevented the loss of life because, from what I understand, he shot the 2 people directly in front of him when he first began shooting. So maybe it's not possible that they could have stopped that. But they could have stopped 9 other people from being wounded. Maybe. We'll never know because those people were disarmed before they were even, before they even entered that, before they were even given the chance. And that was done so by the business. We're going to cover this kind of concept as far as businesses banning guns upon their premises. And, I'll give you guys my take on it and things along those lines. I'd love to hear from you. Anyway, at this point, we have a caller on the line. Caller, first, let's get your name and where you're calling from.
Well, hi, this is Steve Kerbel. I'm calling from Colorado Springs.
Hey, Steve. I'm glad you're joining us. So first of all, guys, I just want to introduce you to Steve Kerbel. He's the Libertarian Party candidate for the presidential run 2016. He's among several other Libertarian Party candidates, but he's one of the guys we got running. So first of all, Steve, just want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Give me like a 30-second little breakdown of why people should vote for you.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks. First of all, Mac, thanks for inviting me to the show. I am Steve Kerbel. I'm a Libertarian candidate for President of the United States. And, what I'm trying to accomplish here is to change the direction of where we're going as a country. I think that right now we've got the Democrats and Republicans that are doing the same thing they've been doing for nearly a century, and nothing ever gets done. And so the reason I decided to run as a Libertarian is, first of all, I am a Libertarian, and basically always have been. And really, I think that we need to be building a culture, once again, of individual liberty, personal liberty, people having choice as the years go by, as the generations go by. And I think that, what I'm trying to accomplish is to really further the cause of liberty, and I think this is the best way I can do it.
Yes, sir. So you said that you're a libertarian, and I'm just curious because this definition is kind of different depending on who you're talking to. What does it mean to you to be a libertarian?
Well, to be a libertarian, in my view, first of all, I'm a member of the party, and that makes me a libertarian. But also, by view, I've never really fit into the definitions of the old parties. Republicans, Democrats, they're the same thing to me. But I guess as a libertarian, I believe in personal liberty first, and I think that as government grows, as opportunities get more and more difficult to achieve because of government intervention. I think that really, as a libertarian, I believe in personal liberty. And, people talk about the other side of libertarianism as fiscal responsibility. And I think that really is an offshoot of personal liberty as well. And so I think that to define myself as a libertarian means that I believe in the adults' ability to choose what they want to do with their lives. I believe that, as I say, less government intervention is very, very important, because the more the government gets bigger, the less personal freedom we have.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So let me ask you, what would you say is, the most important? I know this is very difficult to do, but as far as for you, what do you think is like your issue? What do you want to see focused on in this upcoming 2016 election?
Well, that is a tough question, because I think everything is important. I mean, some of the main issues that we face are, of course, taxation. Taxation is a very important issue, because I'm against the income tax. I'm against the corporate tax. I think that there's a much better way to do that. What's hit me close to home, of course, is regulation. I've seen what regulation does to individuals, businesses, and consumers, and for the most part, it doesn't help anybody but the regulators. So, that's an important thing to me. I think that, of course, the drug war is important as well. That's got to stop. As do all the wars. I think that defense is important, but are we doing it right? I don't think so. It's very hard to pinpoint one issue, Mac.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then especially the fact, the more I've been doing this, the more I realize that most of these issues, especially when you start talking about, the drug war, for example, or even other issues like, privacy, gun rights, all of these things are in a lot of ways linked together. So it's not just, these are separate, issues that don't affect anything else. It's almost like a chain reaction. And I think it's very important that we protect our individual rights. And when we start to get out of balance, we start disrespecting, first of all, the Bill of Rights, these liberties that were enumerated, they're natural rights that were already there. When we start really getting rid of some of the checks and balances of government, we see that it starts to really domino every other right, and we see problems that cascade through all the other rights as well. So I want to kind of go through each kind of section that I'm just going to pull topics out of here, and I hope you don't mind if we run through some of the issues. I'd like to get your a detailed analysis as far as where you stand on some of these issues. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
Okay, so gun rights, and I'd like you to focus on two topics within this. Obviously, open carry, concealed carry. I'd like to hear your opinion on that. But in addition, I'd like to hear your thoughts on constitutional carry.
Okay. Well, when it comes to gun rights, it comes back to our personal liberties to defend ourselves and our property. And I think that as far as, I don't believe in I don't think the government has anything to do with that. I think it's really up to you. As far as open carry, concealed carry, as long as you're not shooting somebody, I don't see that there's any crime committed. To me, I think that this kind of goes back to a very important tenet of our views, and that if you haven't hurt somebody, you haven't committed a crime. So the fact that you are prepared to defend yourself, you haven't done anything wrong. So I think that, it's not even a question of rights. It's a question of, what's natural. And you were talking about natural rights. I suppose that's the best way to define it. But one big natural right is the ability to defend yourself. As far as, we've talked about the Second Amendment. Of course, we've gone back and forth on that as to what was the purpose of the Second Amendment. My personal view is you don't need the Second Amendment to be able to have a weapon to defend yourself and your property. I think that's just a natural right. So, I think as long as people are careful, as long as they're not hurting anybody else, they certainly have every right in the world to defend themselves, their families, and their property.
Yes, sir. So, in relation to constitutional carry, what do you think about the fact that we now in many places have to get permits from the government in order to carry a firearm, concealed or otherwise, in some places?
I think it's terrible. I think that the government shouldn't have any demand to license us, to control us, to know every step of what we're doing. I think that every time we allow government to track what we're up to, we lose more freedom. Because, what's the point of it? A lot of people believe that if the government's going to require us to register our firearms, to know who has what, it seems to me like that plays right into any choice the government may use to come back after us to take those things away from us. And I just think that's a terrible thing. I think that you should once again have the right to have your weapons, as long as you're not hurting somebody else with them in an aggressive way. The government has nothing to do with it. That's the way I look at it.
Absolutely, I agree. And the shall not be infringed part, I think is so clear. And this whole concept where they play the word game and they start redefining what things mean. And even though the Second Amendment, there's clear history on the debate that was had over the Second Amendment in the Constitutional Convention. Madison wrote pretty extensive notes on it. You can get a really good idea as to what they meant, but somehow they think that the Second Amendment only applies to those in a militia, and it just kind of blows me away that this suddenly the word game, the wordsmithing has taken place here with the left, and they try to make it so that oh no, it's only meant for those to protect themselves in a militia. It's not for any other purpose. But as we all know, the militia consisted of the citizenry, which was
right. We didn't have a standing army.
Yeah.
So but once again, I think that you can argue all you want about the Second Amendment. I mean, I think it gives you the right to have a firearm myself, but I think that my belief is deeper than that. I don't think you don't even need the Second Amendment. I think that that's just people say, what's the difference between a liberty, a right, and a freedom? And liberty and a right is what the government supposedly grants you to have. Freedom is what you've always had from the time you were born. Mm-hmm. And I think that we didn't even need that Second Amendment to clarify whether or not we could have a firearm.
Oh,
I think we could have it. We could have it anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, it was even an afterthought as far as the Constitutional Convention. They weren't even going to include it, but they figured, you know what? Maybe we should just make sure that we put this in here because it's so important. It is. They didn't even think that it would need to be expressed, though, but they did it anyway as a hedge against tyranny to make sure that it just did not happen anyway.
And that was very good thinking. I mean, and it's good that you've dug up some of that legislative intent back from Madison, in the very beginning, because that's one of the ways that you can prove. I mean, no law, no right, nothing written by people is ever complete. And so, being able to study legislative intent, I mean, it really shows the meaning behind the law. Perfect example of that as well is in the First Amendment. There's been a lot of argument about whether or not there is a separation of church and state in the First Amendment. And technically, it's not there. But Thomas Jefferson has something to do with that amendment, I'm sure you'll agree. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a letter to the Danbury Baptist Association in 1802 that said that the freedom of religion did create the wall of separation between church and state. And so while a lot of people are trying to legislate their particular religion, it's against the First Amendment. It's the same thing. So that legislative intent is crucial, even going back as far as the Bill of Rights.
Yeah. And the letter that you're talking about, the letter to the Danbury Baptist Church, I find it interesting because the whole reason why this came up, Thomas Jefferson, he wrote the letter in the 1800s, but then it was later brought up by a Supreme Court judge, and he used that as precedent for his legal decision. So, it's interesting that they use a precedent from a letter and not the actual words in the Bill of Rights. But I digress. I want to talk about privacy, and especially in regards to NSA spying. So, being that you're running for the office of presidency, I think it's particularly important to address. I want to know what your thoughts are on how the NSA is data mining and collecting our information now. Do you think it's constitutional? What would you do if it was up to you? Would you continue the program or end it?
Well, I would end it for sure. It is far from constitutional. I mean, it violates the Fourth Amendment, and I think that. The way they're going about this, another thing, going back to, we're talking about our founding fathers, and it's a good discussion. As you might remember, Benjamin Franklin stated something to the, well, I can't quote him precisely, I can say something to the effect of, those who are willing to trade liberty for security deserve neither. And that's essentially where we're going. So no, I would absolutely stop that NSA spying, and I think that there's no way that is allowed under the Constitution.
So regarding it, because many of us know that one of the reasons why they included the Fourth Amendment into the Bill of Rights in the first place was because the way the British were operating is that they were using general warrants, which basically said that they can just search anybody in a particular area for any reason. They didn't need any kind of probable cause or reasonable suspicion to conduct a search. So if they said if the king issued a warrant for anybody in a particular state, they could just search the entire state if they wanted to. So there were no ways to get around that. So I want to draw a comparison basically in how our government is what I would say using general warrants, because the Fourth Amendment is very specific. You have to say who you're searching, the places to be searched, the items to be seized, things along those lines. And do you think that it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment and basically issuing a general warrant, the way that we're using the NSA now for the metadata, where they basically do a subpoena for, let's say, Verizon or some of these big telecom companies, and they get millions of records, which they claim it's only the metadata, but they're taking it from millions of customers without their knowledge and without specific warrants for each individual. Do you think that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment?
I think it most certainly is. I think that what they're doing is it almost violates other amendments as well. I mean, they're basically saying you're guilty until proven innocent because they're investigating you, and so no, it's totally wrong. Any way you slice it, that was wrong, and the fact that it was condoned by our federal government is reprehensible.
I agree. I want to ask you, because there are going to be those that will stand up if we did shut down this kind of program, and when the next attack happens, because it's not a matter of, according to the Department of Homeland Security, it's not a matter of if we will be attacked again on our homeland. It's a matter of when. So whenever the next attack happens, somebody's going to say, if you were the president tomorrow and you shut down the program, somebody's going to say, you caused this, we could have prevented it. What would you say when they start putting the blame game on you?
Well, I'd probably have to think quickly, but the fact is, I think had we not been meddling in the affairs of these other countries, we wouldn't have been facing any of these issues to begin with. What's difficult is you don't want to get tied into too much conspiracy theory either, because sometimes that can harm your credibility when speaking as an authoritarian figure. But the fact is, if we are attacked again, I would have different information as president than I would as a private citizen, because I don't know about you, but I tend not to believe very much of what I hear from my government regarding defense. So the fact is, as president, more than likely I'll have a much better handle on what really happened than what we are told as a general public. So I think that it's probably didn't answer your question. I apologize for that, Mac, but I guess I wouldn't know, because I think that I would have to know the truth at that point in order to answer appropriately.
Well, one thing that I find, because my response to these individuals would be, first and foremost, there have been 2 independent review boards that were commissioned, from what I understand, by the president himself. So obviously, there is a bit of slant on that side for them to want to find something in his favor, and it was an attempt to find out if there has been any kind of attacks that have been stopped from the information we've used from this stuff, and there's zero, not one incident where we've stopped a terrorist attack on U.S. soil from the information we've gained from this data mining. Not one incident, and this is 2 independent review boards, 2 separate ones, not one incident. And first of all, we know that the Boston bombing took place at the marathon, and other situations here have happened, and more would have happened if terrorists would have used either different ways to make bombs, or they would have been a little smarter, or something along those lines. But again, this stuff has not been stopped because of these data mining programs. So I think right there is the proof is in the pudding, essentially, because it's if this was really protecting us, it would have already stopped something that has already happened. However, it hasn't, and there's 0 instances that it's helped us at all.
Well, I would agree, and as a matter of fact, I remember hearing something recently where the FBI claimed that they were able to thwart a couple of potential things that could have happened around July 4th. But once again, I don't know how much I really believe of all that. I just think that, yes, certainly there are people who will get ideas. There's people who want to hurt people because whatever their agenda may be. But I think that listening to mom and pop's phone calls, or data mining for whoever they were talking to, I just don't think that's going to hurt, or really prevent anything that's terrorist. I think it just gives government more ability to know what it is that we're doing in every moment of our lives, between data mining, cameras. I mean, just the privacy's gone, and I think that is a travesty.
So I know that you probably agree with me in this aspect. So I just want to double check. Do you think that the government is inefficient? First of all.
Sorry. Yes, they're terribly inefficient. It's interesting because as I've compared types of businesses, whether they're government contractors, whether they're actually government employees that are having to get things done, I don't know if I'm exaggerating here, but what my gut tells me is if government has to do something, it's going to take 3 times the people than it would if it was not government, because government lives by interpretation of law. And it just seems like they're spending so much time, trying to do what they're trying to do under the auspices of trying to keep up with every law and regulation, which, by the way, I believe is impossible because, they do tend to contradict. But, yeah, certainly they're inefficient, and I think that, that's a good reason why, is because they are basically an institution that is designed to try and live for the laws that they're trying to enforce or deal with. And I think that slows them down tremendously. So absolutely, they are very, very inefficient. Not to mention, in addition to their interpretation of law in their daily job, it also seems to me that, their care and concern for actually executing their jobs may not have as much care as someone who's not working under the auspices of government.
Absolutely, and that's something I was actually going to point to, because for me it's incentives. When you're working for an employer, if you made a tragic mistake and you lost an employer, hundreds of thousands of dollars or something, and they go out of business, that affects you. You've just lost your job, and moreover, if you make that company a lot of money, they may see that you deserve a raise or something along those lines. So, but you don't get those same kind of incentives when you're working for the government. It's somebody else's money, and it's not my money. Oh well, that kind of aspect. And you're absolutely right. It takes 3 times the amount of people to do something when you're working for the government. In addition, it'll probably take 3 times the time and 3 times the money to get it done, because they blow their deadlines. And one thing that's funny with the government is that they'll push their deadlines back. For example, for construction projects, they'll push it back, and then they'll say, "Oh, we actually finished early. We finished before our deadline," and that's only because they pushed their deadline back 3 times. They blew their original deadline several times, though, and they cost 3 times the amount of money to get it done. But I absolutely agree that the government is completely inefficient, which is exactly in regards to this data mining. They're collecting essentially what is every human electronic communication, and this is just too much information. This is a government organization, and as we know, governments are extremely inept, and they're just not very good at functioning efficiently. So for me, I think this is them giving themselves way too much information. They're collecting everything. It just makes it harder for them to find anything at all. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right about that. I think that and the whole point of it is masked to try and protect us. But it's just so much not to protect us. And I think, of course, it's inefficient. Of course, it's ridiculous. Of course, it's unconstitutional. And, of course, it's wrong. But has that ever stopped our government from wanting more? I mean, and that's really what this is about is, government, just like a business, just like anything human beings do, when you create an entity, the people within that entity want that entity to get strong and to grow. And the same thing happens within any government entity. I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at my blog, but there's through my website, which is stevekerbel2016.com. When you get down to the bottom of the front page, you can click into the blog. And the most recent blog I was talking about was, of course, which is regulation, which I'm not fond of. But I'll tell you, in that blog, the most recent blog, I was delineating what happens whenever a new government organization gets started. And from memory, I had found that in the state of Texas in 2008, a new regulation was made that said anyone who repairs computers must have a private investigator's license. And this was absolutely true. And so what I did is I kind of expanded on that. Okay, so all of a sudden somebody decides that in order to repair computers, you need a private investigator's license. Well, welcome to government entity to make sure that everyone who does fixes computers has a private investigator's license. Now, how are they going to support that? Well, by licensing, of course. It's another thing of licensing, of course. I passed around something recently that I actually got from the El Paso Libertarian Party, but El Paso County Libertarian Party of Colorado, that licensing is basically the government taking away your right to do something and selling it back to you. and I think that's absolutely true. So essentially, what they do is they create this division, and they charge for licensing. And the licensing people find that they can go around busting everybody and generating fines. Those fines and the licensing fees generate a lot of revenue, which allows them to hire more enforcement people. And so basically, it just keeps growing. The money grows, the enforcement grows, the money grows more, the enforcement grows more, and then they become unbending because it costs a lot of money to support that division. And so they're going to make sure that they enforce the heck out of that requirement to make sure all these computer repairmen or repair people have private investigators' licenses, and it's a self-fulfilling monster. And that's just a tiny little regulation that could blow up into that. Imagine once you're starting to deal with large federal regulations and even the NSA. I mean, it just wants to keep growing, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's growing against the people and at the expense of the people.
Exactly. You reminded me of another story I want to mention here, and I actually love to hear what you think about this. There's a Kent woman who she was basically started a business. I believe it was out of her home, where she was braiding in traditional African hair braiding styles, and this is something that apparently she was reported on by the Washington Department of Licensing, and she was told that she needs to have a cosmopolitan license, or cosmology. There we go, cosmetology. There we go. I can't say that.
There you go.
Yeah, cosmetology license. So, according to the requirements, they don't actually teach anything about hair braiding, especially in these traditional African styles. So she gets nothing from actually getting certified from it, which the cosmetology license requires at least 16,000 hours of training.
Oh my!
I'm sorry, 1,600 hours of training. So she goes through all this training, and she gets certified, but she didn't get anything out of it other than this little license to continue doing what she's already been doing. What do you think about this?
I think it's ludicrous, and I think it's typical. The problem is that, to back up, I mean, we were supposed to be started as a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people, and that the government was the people. But at some point, it seems like we've gone away from that, as we've diverged away from that vision. But the problem is, I think people automatically see, I shouldn't say all people, but a lot of people see automatic credibility in anything government requires. And I think that's a big problem. It's going to be very difficult to get past that. But I think if you ask the typical law-abiding citizen, and you say, well, should this person required, in order to do these African hairstyles, should they require a cosmetology license? And a lot of people will go, well, sure, why not? Because they don't really think about the details and what this all means, and they certainly aren't going to take the time to dive into whether or not they even cover these types of hairstyles in cosmetology training. So I think the problem is what we really need to do as libertarians, among many other things that we have to do, is to really try and open up the eyes of the public to the fact that a lot of these things the government is requiring don't make any sense at all and are completely a waste of time, a waste of money, and a waste of energy. And I think that this is just another example of what I've seen under many licensing/regulatory type entities, and I think it's only going to keep getting worse unless we do something about it.
Absolutely. So I want to give you one. I want to, before we shift topics away from kind of the NSA. I know we kind of already did that, but I want to touch on one last point. It's been said that nothing can really be understood regarding what you're doing when they collect your metadata, as far as the NSA collecting metadata from these telecom companies. And I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think that that's something that we should worry about, especially considering this example? For example, if you were to have called your doctor after calling, let's say, a herpes hotline or something like that, and then you're calling a bunch of women that you've been in contact with, is there anything that you think that the government can glean from that series of phone calls that they could find with your metadata? Do you think that's a problem?
I think it's a problem. I think that, first of all, I'm certain that with the amount of metadata they've collected, they've also come up with several algorithms that they believe lead them to whatever it is that they're looking for, and they're certainly not going to tell us what they're looking for. So, I think that they might be able to glean some things from patterns that they're finding. And, of course, with any kind of a pattern, you're going to find some truth and some not truth. So, they might be able to dig up some dirt on some people if they really wanted to. I think that was probably their intent. And I think they're probably relying on some algorithms that are probably severely flawed as well. So, I think that, it's just a typical government kind of thing, where I think that they've forgotten that they're us, and that we're them. And I think that they're building this separation. I think that it's wrong. And I think that there's inherent mistakes in most everything that they do.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I agree. So we have to cut to a quick commercial break. Would you mind sticking with us through the break?
Absolutely.
All righty. Okay, guys, we're on the line with Steve Kerbel. Again, he's the Libertarian Party candidate for the presidency in 2016. We're going to talk some more issues and get some more of his viewpoints on these issues. Upcoming here, we're going to talk about centralization of power, gay rights, taxation, drug war, maybe immigration if we have time to get to it. So anyway, you guys don't want to miss this. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back, and we have Steve Kerbel on the line. Again, Libertarian Party candidate for the 2016 election for presidency. Anyway, Steve, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, I want to get your thoughts on why we need to be concerned about centralization of power. Why is that an issue?
It's a huge issue. I mean, you talk about federalization of things that are done by states, counties, and cities and individuals is terrible. I mean, one of the whole purposes of us existing was to get away from those types of things. And I think that, while some people might view it as convenient, I think those people are naive. And I think that if we want to have any choice as to how we live our lives and what we do with ourselves, our bodies, our families, our property, further centralization of power would be a detriment to anyone wanting to do more based upon what they choose.
Would you mind giving us some historical insight as to why our founders were typically against, especially in the Anti-Federalist Party, typically against centralization of power?
Well, because they experienced it in the past. I mean, that's really where all of our Bill of Rights came from, was the fact that, in England, we had of course, the Church of England, which was the reason why we needed that separation of church and state. We had, there was really no individual rights to anything. And so they used that experience and that knowledge in creating the Bill of Rights and creating the structure of the country And I think that that's something we need to be mindful of. But it just feels to me like many people have lost touch with that motivation and with that reasoning. And I think that they need to be woken up and reminded. I actually found myself making a blog also talking about the Bill of Rights because I had something on a website or Facebook or something like that where somebody had said, well, why do I have to worry about that Bill of Rights? I mean, that was done hundreds of years ago. It had nothing to do with me. And I thought, oh, my God, because this person didn't even understand it was there to protect them against their own government. And I think that, certainly it's very, very important that people are educated as to where we came from and why we exist so that we can continue to exist in the way that was planned.
Absolutely. I think that the left has a rude awakening that they're going to hit at some point if they continue down the path that they're going. I've heard so many people, even among some of my friends who I went to high school with, I was having conversations with them, and they actually told me that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, it's old, it's antiquated, we don't need it anymore. We have no risk of the government ever trying to take control or anything, facing any of the issues that in the past we have and were the reasons why the Bill of Rights and the Constitution was established in the first place. They just don't see it. But anyway, I want to move on and try to cover some more issues here regarding the drug war. What do you think about this war on drugs?
I think it's pathetic. It needs to stop. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to get out there, except for people today that we've learned a lot about the medicinal properties of marijuana. But for the most part, I think most people are going to say that for the most part, drugs are bad for you. Okay, but the way we look at it is we've turned it into a crime. We've created this war, and in my opinion, I'd be very surprised if anyone that wanted drugs couldn't get drugs because of the drug war. The flip side of that is you've got an organized crime infrastructure around the world, which is more powerful than many armies of nations around the world. And that's because we've made drugs illegal. Anytime you make something illegal that people want, it creates that organized crime element, and it makes them, gives them opportunities, makes them wealthy. And why we didn't learn from prohibition of alcohol, I don't get it. But the fact is, I think Portugal's got the right idea. I mean, they're treating drug abuse as a health problem. And I think that's really what it is. But, we have this kind of a heritage of Puritanism, of wanting people to live the way that our morals have been taught to us, and we don't recognize the difference between the fact that people have a choice and different upbringings and different sets of morals, and there's many different viewpoints on all this stuff. I think people are forgetting that. I think that that needs to stop. I think the drug war has to stop immediately. I think we've got to stop prosecuting people for possessing and using drugs. I think that, certainly if you hurt somebody, well, guess what? That's a crime. But putting something in your own body that you own and you control, the government has no right to tell you what you can do with your own body. And I think that the drug war is ridiculous. I think it's counterproductive. I think has made things much worse than they would have been if we just treated this as a health issue. And certainly as president, I would stop it.
Outstanding. That's what I want to hear. So that's good stuff. And I agree with everything you just said. I mean, you were hitting it right on the head there. As far as I'm concerned, the issue is about individual rights, and the government really doesn't have any right to tell you what you can do with your body as far as what you can put into your body. It's just kind of like the whole nanny state aspect of they want to monitor how much sodium you're taking and how big of a big gulp drink you can buy at a convenience store. These kind of things have absolutely nothing to do with the government, and I think people need to really pump the brakes a little bit when they start trying to say, there ought to be a law against that.
Yeah.
If as long as nobody's being hurt, no one's rights are being deprived, there shouldn't be a law against it.
No, there shouldn't. And there's been a lot of incidents in the news recently of law enforcement people, really going too far. But I think that when it comes down to it, we cannot blame law enforcement for enforcing the laws that we make. And I think that, the mistake that we're making is by trying to ban things, by trying to legislate things, by trying to make all these laws that are it's just crazy. And so so often, I would have to say far more often than not, they don't accomplish what they were planned to accomplish in the first place. It just creates more problems.
I agree. Yeah, completely agree with that. So let's move on to another topic here. What I find is somewhat related. I want to talk about immigration, illegal immigration in particular. What is your viewpoint? Because this is one area where sometimes I disagree with the Libertarian Party, and I'm interested to hear what you think. Do you believe in open borders? Do you believe that we should have border security? What are your thoughts on immigration and illegal immigration?
It's a good subject, Mac. I mean, I will back up a little bit by saying that while I am very purist in my libertarian views, and most of my views tend to dovetail with the platform, I think that's one of the reasons it was a natural fit for me to be a member of the party. But the fact is, yes, libertarians believe in open borders. I personally still believe in open borders, but I believe you have to have a roadmap to get to your ultimate goal. I think when you shock the system overnight, it's only going to make things more complicated and worse.
Okay, so
ultimately,
so how would you go about doing that then?
Incrementally. First thing you got to do is you've got to stop the reasons for the unsavoriness of some people who are coming here illegally. You know, there's definitely a mafia influence because of the drug war. There are people who would like to take advantage of our welfare state. I think that they don't really recognize or even care about the fact that any benefits they could receive were paid for by their neighbors, you know, and by coming in without authority and taking advantage of these types of things, which I know is more difficult as the years go by, but it still happens. And I think that before you can really consider opening up the borders, you've got to fix the reason why we have the problems that we do. So I think you got to take care of the welfare state. You got to stop the drug war. And then you have to be a lot smarter about how you handle your borders. You know, I still think you have the right for your own security to know who's coming in and going out. But I also believe that if you fix the laws that are creating the dangers from people coming in, you know, at will and without authority or knowledge, I think there's going to be a lot less people coming in with the intent of doing bad stuff if we fix the laws. And once you fix the laws, then it becomes a little easier to make the border security much more lax. And ultimately, in a perfect world, it would be nice people could come and go as they please. And I think that, but we still have to be mindful of our security.
Okay, so I want to pivot again to another topic here. Let's go to gay rights. What do you think about homosexuals being allowed to have same-sex marriages? And in addition to that, what are your thoughts on the SCOTUS ruling that was recently held down?
Two sides to this one. They're both pro-individual rights. I mean, on one side, you know, your first reaction is, well, gosh, it's nice that the Supreme Court has allowed them to marry, okay, if they want to. But the problem with that is it also leaves out the fact that the government's still dictating what you can do with your private life. It shouldn't have had to go that far. And I think that ultimately, you know, it's nice that under the current situation, that if gays want to marry, they can do so. Okay, that's good. But I think we've got a very long way to go because, first of all, I think the government needs to get out of regulating who can do what, you know, if they're consenting adults with their personal lives anyway. So that's the two sides to it. So it's good, but it's also more government control.
All right. Well, I really do appreciate you coming on the show today, Steve. I had a real good time talking to you. I think, I'm going to be watching you in this election here. I'm definitely interested to see how things go, and I wish you the best of luck in your campaign. Can you one more time just give our listeners your website and any kind of social media, that kind of stuff, so they can get involved in your campaign?
Absolutely. Okay, the website is Steve Kerbel. That's Kerbel 2016.com. It's the same thing on Facebook, Steve Kerbel 2016 on Facebook. And we'd certainly love to have you join up. We're organizing volunteers now around the country to help with the campaign. Also, I encourage you, when you're on the website, SteveKerbel2016.com, take a look at the Road to Reform page. Because I think that ultimately one of the things that we have not done a very good job of so far is explaining to the American people how it is we get to the platform, to the goals of what we want to do. Because you can't do it overnight. It's got to be step by step. And that Road to Reform page will say some very, very important issues, some things that we believe need to be done, but also we'll tell you the first step to getting there. And I think that that is the way that we can relate to the American public that does not identify as a libertarian, to see, okay, why it is that we want to do these things, but how do we get there? And you see that the steps are painless and beneficial along the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, presidential candidate Steve Kerbel. Thanks again for joining us. I really do appreciate it, and you're welcome back anytime.
I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me, Mac.
All right. Best of luck.
Thanks. Same to you.
Take care. All right, guys. So at this point, I'm noticing we are about to end our first hour of the broadcast on the 405media.com. For those of you over there, I would like to say thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to join us for the second hour, feel free. You can go to our hub, OnTheMoveShow.com. Check out the second hour there. You can also check out the archive on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow anytime. So if you want to go to the next program on the 405 Media, completely understand and, in fact, support them. It's a good group of patriots. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and cut to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore. With the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. We are in the second hour of the broadcast. I first want to say thank you so much for sticking with us, and we got a lot to cover. Today, we're going to be talking about in the Mac Attack, we're going to talk about Planned Parenthood's profiting from the sale of fetal tissue. We're going to talk about 6 companies that don't want your business if you're armed. We're going to talk about the possibility of potentially making and holding companies who prevent you from being armed on their premises, on their private property, which is their right. I believe that they have the right to prevent people from carrying firearms on their property. However, should these businesses who ban people from having guns on their premises, should they be held liable legally for any kind of injury or death in their establishments as a result of an armed person coming in there and shooting the place up, and no one being able to defend themselves because they don't have any firearms? So we'll talk about that. Also, I want to give suggestions for the GOP, and I want to talk about hilarious new ways to protest. So buckle up. We're going to be trying to cover a lot of different stuff. As usual, you can always join the conversation, so feel free to do so. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. You can message us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Get us on Twitter @OnTheMoveShow. Send us an email, talk@OnTheMoveShow.com. So anyway, all those different ways you can participate in the conversation, so feel free to give us your take on it, and I definitely would love to have a conversation with you about these issues. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and enter into our next segment of the show. This is the Mac Attack.
It's time for the Mac Attack!
This is a segment where I report about outrageous events in the news, so sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. At first, though, we have to get into a subject that's really serious, and I think that it deserves to be talked about. I mean, honestly, we have to talk about it. It's not a particularly enjoyable topic, and in fact, I would highly recommend that if you have children in the room, you go ahead and send them away unless you really want them to hear about this Planned Parenthood conversation. So anyway, there have been videos that have been emerging that were surreptitiously recorded of Planned Parenthood executives. Now, if you're not aware of Planned Parenthood, they are one of the leading, what is essentially abortion clinics or women's health clinics in the country. They conduct the vast majority of abortions in America, from what I've been able to glean by doing research. And whether or not you are pro-life or pro-choice or somewhere in between, one thing that I think is pretty interesting, and I think we need to discuss it, is the fact that this process of abortion itself, it is being funded through taxpayer money under the guise of women's health, but it is in fact going towards paying for abortions. So, this is what the left will gin up their base, and they'll say, "Oh, you're trying to cut, women's health benefits or the ability of women to go get checkups." Well, there are other free clinics. There are other clinics that don't offer abortions. For me personally, I think that at minimum, this is a very divisive issue that we all know is extremely divisive, and I think it's immoral for the government, number one, to tax us, to fund things that we disagree with fundamentally, and to provide money to programs that are extremely divisive, and especially let's twist it to another example. For example, all right. First of all, I think one that's even more strongly rooted in the Constitution. Let's go to an example here. Let's say that the government, somebody wanted to pass a law that basically funded people who wanted to purchase guns to basically have a subsidy. So the government would subsidize money to gun manufacturers for you to purchase a gun. Now, obviously, we all know that the gun rights conversation is extremely divisive, left and right, and a lot of different conversations had, even within the gun community, about it. So you can imagine the left's uproar. I mean, they would lose their freaking minds if suddenly the government was helping pay for people to get guns. But this is first of all, this is a constitutional right to get guns, enumerated in the Bill of Rights. Now, some can say that the right to an abortion is constitutionally protected according to Supreme Court rulings. However, it is not enumerated in the Constitution. So it's nowhere in the Bill of Rights. But I digress. I'm not talking about that. But can you imagine how much of an uproar that the left would be in if they were forced to pay for subsidies for people to buy guns? They would be pretty upset. However, they don't seem to see how people who are extremely passionate and believe that an abortion is in fact killing a human baby, they don't understand that people who believe that could not want their money to be used to fund this process. Now, whether or not you agree or disagree with that stance, it really doesn't matter. This is what these people believe. All right? So it doesn't matter pro-life, pro-choice, somewhere in between. That doesn't matter. The point is that you're taking money from somebody through the coercive force of government, and you're giving it to another group to do something that the person you took that money from has a fundamental belief against. It's wrong. It's immoral. In my opinion, the government should not be in this business, period. They should not be subsidizing Planned Parenthood. Now, this is regardless of these videos. This is just my opinion. I don't think that this should be funded by the government. If there's a demand for this kind of thing, that's a free market situation. I'm not particularly right now calling for this to stop. However, I think it would stop significantly if it wasn't being subsidized by $500 million of taxpayer money each year. Each year. $500 million of our dollars are going to Planned Parenthood. They say this is about quality of life, life-saving health care for women and children. However, there are other clinics that offer, for example, exams for women, other kind of health care, life-saving care for women and children. There are other programs that do this, and these other clinics don't participate in abortions. So, if somebody wants to pay for an abortion, I think that money should come out of their own pocket. And I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of as far as if it should even happen at all today. That's a conversation for another day. But let's talk about these videos that were released by or about Planned Parenthood from these companies or from this organization that's basically trying to discuss what Planned Parenthood is doing, because what they're doing is selling fetal tissue, is what they call it, fetal tissue. Some would call it baby parts, and this is very disturbing to me. I think this is extremely sickening. This situation right here, I believe, is going to put the nail in the coffin in Planned Parenthood as far as I'm concerned, and I think it might also reignite the abortion debate as far as if we as a society want to do this at all. And even within the Libertarian Party, I might add that there is some discrepancy regarding what libertarians believe concerning abortion. Some believe that it's you have a right to do whatever you want with your body, and others recognize that perhaps the individual inside you as a woman, the baby, the child, perhaps has a right to live as well. So it just basically boils down to whether or not you recognize a fetus as a human, or at what point human life comes into play. And there's really no way for us to measure that. We have no real way of determining when something is alive. So this is the problem. This is the debate. So I think this Planned Parenthood situation is definitely going to spark this debate again, and it will be interesting to see where this goes. I honestly, this is something I've struggled with personally, so I'm interested to see where our country will go with this debate. So anyway, I want to play this clip. This is from the Center for Medical Progress. This is one of the clips, and by the way, these are the people that have been putting out these surreptitiously recorded videos of Planned Parenthood. Crazy. So let me first play this clip real fast.
Not a fee. It's not a fee. It's actually just the cost of transmitting this material. There are no financial benefits. The
Absolutely
clinic and absolutely. And we're happy. Look, we look forward to the facts coming out.
All right, let's be clear here. There are several things that are happening, and we need to discuss them all. So first things first, the footage that's been released has shown these Planned Parenthood senior executives haggling over baby part prices. So how much will you give me for a liver? How much will you give me for this? How much will you give me kidneys? Oh, that kind of thing. $75 a part, $100 a part, that kind of thing. Oh, well, maybe we'll just pay for the parts that we can use. And basically, this Center for Medical Progress is who I believe is releasing these videos. They are posing as somebody who wishes to buy this fetal tissue or baby parts, and it's important to discuss this. I think it's sickening. I think this is disgusting. First of all, they're literally selling parts. It's not considered a human to them when it's in the womb, but it's a human part outside that they can sell for profit. There are laws against trafficking human body parts, and I think this is disgusting what they're doing. What they're trying to say is basically this is being provided for research purposes. They're trying to provide it to research companies so they can use these fetal tissues, these baby parts, to conduct research and experiments on, etc. And what they are doing, as the woman in the clip I just played said, they're not making a profit. No. They're not profiting from it. They're just covering the cost, the expenditures to actually extract these specimens. That's what they're saying. However, that simply cannot be true. And the reason why it can't be true is if it costs you X amount of money to extract this specimen, then to get that money back, to recoup your expenses, you should be charging X amount of money to whoever is researching. If you're charging Y amount of money, and Y amount of money happens to be more than what X amount of money was, you've just made a profit. So the fact that they're haggling over these prices is sickening as it is. They're over lunch and they're talking about, selling human body parts while, they have a fork with salad on it and they're eating and laughing. It's sick. This is disgusting to me. Now, there is some question as far as what the Planned Parenthood CEOs have been saying. They're saying, "Oh no, these are not real. They're not real videos. This is fake." You can see it for yourself. This looks pretty real, and you can see their executives saying it. You can physically see. It's not like a recording where it was surreptitiously recorded audio, and you can't see the person's talking. You can physically see them standing there talking about this stuff, haggling over price. And again, if it wasn't about profit, they would just charge you a specific amount, and that would be it for conducting research on these baby parts. However, it obviously is about profit, because they're trying to get as much as they want. And in fact, I have to play this clip here from one of these executives haggling over the prices. Again, this is a senior executive haggling over baby part prices. So here it is. It's a couple minutes long. I'm not really sure where the part is in the clip that I want to get to, but she talks about how Lamborghinis are expensive after she was haggling over the prices.
Hello, I'm Cecile Richards, President of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. I want to be really for...
Okay, I'm skipping that here. So the footage you're about to see was taken from an undercover meeting with top-level Planned Parenthood abortion director or doctor executive. Some viewers may find this content disturbing.
What would you expect for intact tissue?
Okay, so this is the Center for Medical Progress. They're actually posing as a buyer, and they're meeting with Planned Parenthood executives.
What sort of compensation? What sort of...
Well, why don't you start by telling me what you're used to paying?
Okay, so she said, why don't you start by telling me what you're used to paying? It should be unlawful for any person to knowingly acquire, receive, or otherwise transfer any human fetal tissue for valuable consideration. This is U.S. Code. On February 6, 2015, investigators posing as fetal tissue procurement company met with Planned Parenthood.
We'll be exhibiting at the Medical Directors Council meeting in a couple of weeks, so I don't know if you'll be attending.
And the president of that organization.
Oh,
President of Planned Parenthood. She oversees the Pasadena affiliate and her leadership and advisory
So
positions.
we had just started the conversation, and Susan was explaining they're a startup, that they have been about a year in business. They're a for-profit company that's connecting researchers with people willing to donate tissue. Our volume, thank you for giving it to me, is 800 a year with 60 in the second trimester. And we just started to talk about how the process worked with Novogenics down in Los Angeles when I was there. Okay. To back up a little bit, PDFA, our parent body, signed the patients
Skipping ahead here a little bit.
And discussion as I was leaving.
What would you expect for intact tissue? What sort of compensation? What sort of...
Well, why don't you start by telling me what you're used to paying?
Okay. I don't think so. I would like to know what would make you happy. What would work for you?
Well, in negotiations, the person who throws out the figure first is at a loss, right?
Okay, so very first thing she's saying, well, in negotiations, the person who throws out the figure first is at a loss, right? So she doesn't want to throw out a figure. You're at a loss. How could there be at a loss if you're simply giving prices that it costs for you to actually get this sample, this tissue, this baby part? How in the world could you be at a loss if you're just simply saying what it cost you to get this and what you need to recoup your expenses? So this is literally haggling, negotiating. She even says herself, she's in a negotiation. So what would there be to negotiate if you're just simply saying the price?
No, I don't look at it that way. I know you want to play that game. I get it, but I want
low ball because I'm used to low things from.
You know what? If you low ball, I'll act pleasantly surprised, and you'll know it's a low ball.
Okay.
What I want to know is what would work for you.
How is it a low ball if you're just recouping your price? Again, how is this not for profit? This is obviously for profit. This is the president of the organization. It's astounding.
Don't lowball it.
Okay.
Tell me what you really.
$75 a specimen.
Oh.
Oh, very quick. $75 a specimen. Okay.
That's way too low. And that's way too low. I want to keep you happy.
I've been in places that did 50.
She was gonna do 50 because she's been in places that did 52.
But see, we're not in it for the money.
Right. Not in it for the money. Not in it for the money at all. Just let's negotiate. Don't give me a lowball number. I don't want to be the first one to say my number because then, I'll be in a weakened position.
Why don't you start by telling me what you're used to paying?
I want
lowball $75 a specimen, and we don't want to be in the position of being accused of selling tissue.
Oh, they don't want to be in the position of being accused of selling tissue and stuff like that. However, they are. They clearly are, and they know that they are, which is why they are doing it like this, which is why they're playing this legal limbo that they've been busted for. I don't see Planned Parenthood coming back. There's more to this. I want to play a little bit more, and then we'll kind of shift gears here.
On the other hand, there are costs associated with the use of space and all that kind of stuff. So what would you think about it?
Right. So way higher than that. So I'd like to start at around 100.
Okay. Now this is for tissue that you actually take, not just the tissue that the person volunteered that you can't find anything. Right?
Exactly.
Now this is for tissue that you complicated by the fact that our volumes are so low too. I mean, are you looking at 8 and 9 week specimens or only second trimester specimens?
10 to 12 week, end of the first trimester. If those are pretty intact specimens, then that's something we can work with.
So that's an interesting concept. Let me explain to you a little bit of a problem, which may not be a big problem. If our usual technique is suction at 10.
Okay, so I'm just going to cut this. I was trying to get to the point where she said Lamborghinis are expensive, and she jokes about her prices. Regardless, you can feel free to watch the clip. This is the Center for Medical Progress on YouTube. You can check them out. They're releasing these videos, and it's important to note. Now, the very first video here, let's go back and play this one more time. This is their spokesperson. This Planned Parenthood VP says fetuses may come out intact. And she's basically talking about, this is the video here on their website. She's talking that they're not making any profit. So after you've heard that negotiation take place, we'll play this one more time.
It's not a fee. It's not a fee. It's actually just the cost of transmitting this material. There are no financial benefits.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. And we're happy. Look, we look forward to the facts coming out.
Okay, they look forward to the facts coming out. Let's discuss that. If they really did, in fact, look forward to these facts coming out, well then it would be simple. They would be okay with these videos coming out because these videos are clearly of their executives. They're actually debating whether or not these videos are real, and I think anybody with a set of eyeballs can see that they are real. But let's talk about this open transparency that the Planned Parenthood actually wants. They want all the facts to come out. Well, here's an article on theblaze.com on July 31st, 2015, written by Oliver Darcy. Judge blocks release of new video by Center for Medical Progress. Read group's response to charges. A federal judge on Friday blocked the release of additional recordings captured by the group behind the series of undercover Planned Parenthood videos. The move came after the National Abortion Federation filed a request for an injunction and restraining order against the Center for Medical Progress in the U.S. District Court in the Northern District of California. Judge William Orrick in San Francisco granted a temporary restraining order after it was argued the footage was captured in an unethical and unlawful manner. The National Abortion Federation also contended the release of new footage could endanger individuals captured on video. The safety and security of our members is our top priority, the group's president, Vicky Saporta, I believe that's how you say her name, Vicky Saporta, said in a statement, the security has been compromised by the illegal activities of the group with ties to those who believe it is justifiable to murder abortion providers. CMP went to great lengths to infiltrate our meetings as a part of a campaign to intimidate and attack abortion providers. The Center for Medical Progress adamantly contested the charges in a statement protested online. The Center for Medical Progress follows all applicable laws in the course of our investigative journalism work. The group said the National Abortion Federation is a criminal organization that has spent years conspiring with Planned Parenthood on how to violate federal laws on partial birth abortion and fetal tissue sales. The Center for Medical Progress will contest any attempts to suppress our First Amendment rights to free speech or silence the freedom of the citizen press, the organization added. The Center for Medical Progress has released 4 videos over the last few weeks purporting to show Planned Parenthood officials discussing the sale of aborted fetus parts. Neither a spokesperson for the National Abortion Federation or Center for Medical Progress was immediately available to the Blaze for comment. So this is important because they claim that they actually want it to be open and transparent. They claim that they want this information to be out there. They want the truth, but they don't want the truth. They want to suppress individuals' freedom of speech. They want to suppress these new videos from coming out. And from what I understand, they're talking about releasing 1 video a week, and they may have a lot more videos. There is actual rumors from the left. They try to say that these are just totally fake. They have no evidence, no proof that they're fake, by the way, and it's clearly their executives' faces on it. So I want to read from you, or from an email I got here. This is on MoveOn.org. I sign up to these lefty websites sometimes to sign petitions that sometimes I agree with. But in addition, I like to know what these guys are doing. So they send me emails, and I get a real good idea as to what they're doing. So here's an email from MoveOn.org that I got. It said, "Dear fellow MoveOn member, I'm Lori something, a MoveOn member in Austin, Texas. Republican leaders like Speaker John Boehner are leading an attack against Planned Parenthood. This is the GOP's latest stunt to take away women's rights to own their health care needs." Or to their own healthcare needs. All right, so again, this is an attack against women's rights to have basically healthcare. Find services that they can provide women's healthcare. Again, as I mentioned, number one, not true. That's not even close to true. There are other clinics and organizations out there that don't participate in abortions. First of all, that are not Planned Parenthood. Maybe they even do participate in abortions. But even if Planned Parenthood just didn't get funded to do the abortions, if they weren't allowed to do abortions anymore, then, or we weren't funding them, this organization's still there. It doesn't go away. It could still give women breast exams and check out all their lady parts and all that stuff. All that stuff could still be done. We just don't have to fund them. So, number one, it's not even true that it's going after the women's right to get their own health care. It's not even true. Because other places exist that they can get health care from that aren't Planned Parenthood, and Planned Parenthood could still continue to do these kind of services even without government subsidies. So they're saying that, Republican leaders like Speaker John Boehner are calling for a formal investigation into Planned Parenthood after an edited video surfaced that falsely accused the organization of selling organs. Well, okay, this is their opinion, and that's okay. They can believe that it's false. I happen to believe that this is real. Looking at it, it seems pretty damning. The evidence seems to be pretty highly stacked against Planned Parenthood, and I believe this will be the nail in the coffin in their subsidies anyway. Maybe I'm wrong, but if people won't stand up against this, I don't know what you will stand up against. The selling of human organs for profit. You're not talking about recouping your expenses. You're talking about selling human organs for profit. Now, the libertarian in me wants to say, well, yeah, people should be able to sell organs. Sure, why not? Regardless, it is against the law. Let us be clear. It is against federal law to sell organs. Human, doesn't matter if you're adult, baby, it's against the law. So they're currently violating, if they are in fact selling these. Again, this is alleged that they are, but I happen to believe that they are, in fact, selling for profit. But that's just my belief. If they are, in fact, doing this for profit, they are violating U.S. code, federal law, and I believe these bastards should go to prison. That's just me. That's just me, and they certainly should not get any kind of federal subsidy. People who disagree with this stuff should not be forced to pay for it. That's just my opinion. But anyway, I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about this. I'm sure you all have been following this news story, and I would definitely love to hear from you. Feel free to give us a call and And let me know where you stand. The number of the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. You can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. You can message us on Twitter. Twitter is @OnTheMoveShow. And get us on Facebook, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Anyway, we'll be right back after this break, and we're going to continue with a few other topics we have. We're going to talk about 6 companies that don't want your business if you're armed. Should businesses who ban guns on their premises be held liable for injury and death in their establishments? I'm going to give you suggestions for the GOP, and I want to talk about hilarious new ways to protest. I have some clips of this as well, and I'm going to play them for you. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore. With the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, Mac. We're back, and we have a lot to cover, so we're just going to get right into it. I'm going to read an article here from concealednation.org written by James England on July 27th, 2015. And this article is titled 6 Companies That Don't Want Your Firearms Near Them and How You Can Replace Them. I'm just going to kind of go through some of these here. We got the first one, gun-free culprit number 1 is IKEA. The land of 1,000 miniature torque wrenches, trendy chic particle board furniture, and cheap plastic cups has long kept the standing policy. In IKEA's round Swedish meatball eyes, there will never be a need for a man or woman to shop their arm. They kind of had a typo in this, but no worries. As of March 2013, IKEA has been on record as saying guns are not permitted in their store. Just as good, really. You'd be better off checking out a DIY series on building your own IKEA furniture from scratch. Best of all, it probably lasts longer. So, anyway, there's ways around going to IKEA. Just to give you a heads up, IKEA apparently does not want you to shop there if you're armed. So, don't. Respect their rights. Respect their property rights to not patronize their store. Don't go there. I wouldn't. As far as I'm concerned, I don't want to give my money to companies that don't want it. So, for me, I try to support pro-gun businesses. However, it is very difficult. And let me give you an example here. This is our number 2. Qdoba Mexican Grill and sometimes Chipotle. Now, this hurts me. It hurts me so. I just found this out. You can order a burrito the size of your head or the size of a child's leg, but you can't do it with a concealed carry firearm on your hip, at least not in Qdoba Mexican Grill. We're waiting for official confirmation from Jack in the Box. They're the ones who actually own Qdoba. We've also, unfortunately, discovered some Chipotle locations are asking, but not outright prohibiting firearms. This all took place in 2014, and it seems that most locations leave it up to local and state law. So this is, there are ways, they're giving a recipe here on this article on how you can make a Chipotle-style chicken barbecue burrito. I think that's pretty awesome. Feel free to look that up on their website. Again, concealcarrynation.org. They also talk about Costco. Costco has been preventing concealed carry and open carry on their premises. They don't like you carrying firearms in their store, apparently. So, again, that's one thing. Another, AMC movie theaters. We just saw that many movie theaters are becoming gun-free zones all across the country, and it's becoming a problem because we're fish in a barrel. Essentially, they've disarmed us, and now it's a gun-free zone, and criminals can strike, and we can't defend ourselves. We're going to get into this a little more. Additionally, the last place here is Whole Foods. They're talking about the CEO of Whole Foods admits to overcharging his customers. It's almost a part of the whole, no pun intended, plan. You walk into a beautiful, decored, chic grocery store that promises all the mantras of sustainability and organic culture, and it turns out that it's the same rubbish they sell at every other grocery store, just more expensive. Well, as the Second Amendment check found out, apparently they also don't allow anyone to have firearms except law enforcement. This means employees, customers, people dropping off the food that the customers will later be overcharged for. Everyone. That's great to know for criminals in the area. And in Framingham, Massachusetts, that's exactly what one criminal took advantage of. Apparently, somebody has robbed a Whole Foods. So, anyway, the article concludes here. If you see a gun-free policy, find an alternative. If you find an alternative, post it up here so we all know about it. It's important to promote healthy, sustainable business practices, and making your customers sitting ducks is not one of them. So, anyway, again, concealcarry.org, article, 6 companies that don't want your firearms near them and how you can replace them. Just something that I thought you guys should mention. The one that really bothers me, though, is the Qdoba and Chipotle one. I happen to frequent Qdoba all the time. All the time. I go there all the time. I had no idea, but I haven't also seen any signs on the door. I might have to go up to the manager next time I'm there and ask them what their weapons policy is, because if it is a company policy, then I'm going to have to figure out something else. Just like with me, I was already kind of doing a boycott just because I don't like Starbucks coffee. I don't think it's particularly good, but I'm even more so, even if it's my only choice. And I've had Starbucks coffee before. It was the only choice. There was nothing around, so I went ahead and I got Starbucks. This is before I really started hearing about their anti-gun policy. Starbucks, as you all know, they have restricted people in their stores. They've asked people in their stores not to bring firearms. And that's their right. I think that you have a right as a business owner to say, hey, don't bring firearms, or no, you're not allowed to have them. But this opens up another question. This is an article on newsasaurus.com that I think we need to have this conversation today. So, should businesses who ban guns on their premises be liable for injury and death in their establishments? This is an interesting conversation that I think that we should have. So, let's go ahead and read some of this article here. This is written by John Britton on July 26, 2015. A gun rights group on Facebook called Cold Dead Hands has offered up an interesting conceptual argument regarding businesses that ban guns on premises and liabilities for injuries and death that may result from mass shootings in gun-free zones. A meme posted on their page yesterday has gotten thousands of likes, shares, and comments, mostly supportive of the idea. It says, should owners who choose to make their businesses gun-free zones be liable when their unarmed customers are hurt by violent criminals? This comes in the aftermath of the shooting in Tennessee that left 5 military personnel dead and a prominent picture of a bullet-ridden door with no gun sign in the middle of all the holes. It follows both the conviction of the Aurora, Colorado theater shooter and a new theater shooter in Lafayette, Louisiana, both of which were gun-free zones. As the Post points out, and by the way, I just need to point out that both of them, from what I recall, maybe my details are mixed up. I don't think so, though. Both of the shooters in these theater shootings got their guns legally. They went through all the legal processes to get their guns, from what I remember. Perhaps I'm wrong. If I am, feel free to correct me, but I don't think I am. 360-450-5625 if you want to call me out on something, so feel free. As the Post points out, every mass shooting event in the last 25 years has been in a gun-free zone, with the exception of the shooting of Gabby Giffords in a public parking lot in the constitutional carry state of Arizona. the concept of liability is fairly simple. A law-abiding citizen with a legally owned and carried firearm who is supposedly protected in their right to keep and bear arms by the Second Amendment is effectively disarmed by the property rights of the business and left unprotected while on the business's premises. The business effectively deprives a citizen of the right of self-defense, but offers no other protection of its customers while on site. When a business obstructs the individual's ability to defend themselves, do they take on an implicit burden of providing the protection they have denied? Now, this is a really interesting question, I think. And they go on to say, there are obvious free market answers. One of those is for people to simply not frequent the businesses that deny them the right of self-protection. Also, I would also say that companies could also hire security guards. If you only want, the people that you trust to be armed, then maybe hire a security guard if that's your issue. I think that's reasonable. However, should they be legally liable? You're saying that to come into this business, you have to disarm, which is your right to be armed, and it's their right to disarm you. But you should have some reasonable expectations that the fact that you've disarmed yourself, now you're not going to need that. You will be safe. They should provide some of that security. Am I right? I would like to hear from you guys. Honestly, I think that it's not a bad idea. I think that this would be one way to answer it. However, it also brings the government involved, and I believe that we're a litigious society, and I think that many people will be sued, and maybe sued ridiculously. Like, for example, some of these situations where somebody slips and falls, and they go through these claims of how the company was responsible for it. In some of these cases, yeah, it's true. Maybe the company was responsible for it. But some of these are people just being litigious and trying to get money out of a company. So it could become a nightmare for business owners, and this is something to think about, perhaps. But all they have to do to get rid of that nightmare is to allow people to defend themselves. I think it's incredibly dangerous for us to enter gun-free zones. And one thing that I would recommend, number one, is, if you have the ability to conceal carry, for example, if you have a concealed carry permit, businesses don't know. And in some states, I'm not advocating, by the way, for you to do this, but in some states, the sign, the gun-free zone sign, doesn't hold the force of law. So, if nobody sees you conceal carrying, then who are you really hurting? I don't know. I mean, you're not respecting the property rights of that individual. I think the best answer would be just to not go to these companies. But I think this could be a good idea. I'd like to hear more about it. I'd like to hear more discussion. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say on it. Please feel free to give us a call, 360-450-5625. Anyway, in the article it goes on to say that police can't be everywhere, and that it's important for us to be able to defend ourselves. And they talk about crime statistics. In 2004, the Crime Prevention Center, Crime Prevention Research Center, CPRC, released a revised report showing that 92% of mass public shootings between January 2009 and July 2014 took place in gun-free zones. Where did they occur? Schools, movie theaters, military bases, twice at Fort Hood Army Base, churches, and almost all were gun-free zones, either by the government mandate or private property owners' prerogative. So now, when it comes to government mandate, this is a particularly interesting issue, because this is where I draw the line. The government does not have the right to restrict your right to keep and bear arms. So there should be no government-enforced gun-free zone, because your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and particularly by the federal government. That's in the Second Amendment. However, if you have a state constitution and your state constitution prohibits your state government from violating your Second Amendment rights as well, your right to keep and bear arms, then again, they shouldn't be allowed to do that either. There's some debate on whether or not the 14th Amendment applies to this and makes the federal constitution apply to state governments and local governments and stuff like that. Legally, they probably do. However, I've had conversations with you guys about my take on the 14th Amendment, and I think it's been used incorrectly, and I think that it is a usurpation of power by the state governments. So, again, I think that we have a state constitution for a reason, and typically those are fairly good at protecting us from these kind of things. So, anyway, I want to give you guys something to think about here. regarding the GOP. Shift gears. We're going to talk about another topic here. One problem that we've had, particularly if, I don't consider myself a Republican or even a conservative anymore, but one issue within the GOP, I typically find myself looking towards GOP candidates because they are typically better. Now, they're not better in all the areas that I'd like them to be. I'd like them to be true libertarians in philosophy. However, I can't really expect that because they're running as Republicans again. So, one thing that I've mentioned before, I've played this clip before for you guys, and I think it bears repeating. It's a clip by Ronald Reagan. He talks about bold color differences, and I'll play the clip here in a moment. But this is my suggestion to the GOP now. We got the election coming up. I mean, many people, including myself, are looking at third-party candidates, but there are a lot of good Republican candidates that are better than candidates we've seen in the past. We got a lot more choices now. 16 candidates, I believe, that are going to be in this upcoming debate. So, we'll see what the GOP nomination gets. But my fear is that they're going to give us a Jeb Bush. They're going to give us a moderate. They're going to give us a Chris Christie or a Donald Trump. And yes, Donald Trump is a moderate, and we'll get to that again. We've covered this before in the past, but it bears repeating because he's the front runner for some reason in the GOP. It blows my mind, astonishing how this progressive Donald Trump can be a front runner, as well as Jeb Bush. These are the favorites, but let us not forget Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Paul Walker, these individuals. There's a lot more people running as well. So, as I said, 16 candidates. But one thing that we hear frequently is that, we can't win if we put that guy out. He's too extreme, blah, blah, blah. And what they say is that essentially we have to compromise. People in the grassroots, we have to compromise our beliefs and essentially put a moderate in there, somebody who would be more electable to the left. Well, I got news for you guys. The left doesn't want to vote for Republicans. They've already got their candidates. They want socialist candidates. They want more redistribution of wealth. They want amnesty. They want these things. And to go Democrat light is not going to help us. We need bold colors, as Ronald Reagan said. So I'm going to play the clip, give you his speech. I think you'll see that it resonates today.
In spite of all our greatness, our people feel a sense once again, or a desire to feel a sense of greatness, a sense and a pride in their own capacity for performing great needs. We Republicans, I think, can do something about this, but not if we try to be all things to all people. There are some in our midst who've suggested that we should broaden our base, except that what they mean by broadening our base is to blur the image, to make us indistinguishable from the other party. Some have suggested that the 1974 election, the disastrous results, were an indictment of what we stand for. Well, may I suggest that the meaning of the last election will not be found among those who voted. It will be found of my polling those who stayed home, the biggest non-voter bloc in our nation's history. And why did they stay home? Well, because they said they couldn't see any difference.
Okay, we're going to get back to this here. But let me ask you, when you're looking at a Jeb Bush presidency against, let's say, for example, a Hillary Clinton presidency, if these are our choices, if we're choosing Bush or Clinton, wow, I feel like I'm back in time again. Bush and Clinton. First of all, can't we get rid of these family groups that just think that they have the right to just rule us all the time? They think that because they have a big name that they deserve, they're owed, they're next in line for the presidency. But again, let's go to their policies. For example, Bush, essentially amnesty. He's not calling for a pathway to citizenship, but it's just slightly to the right of that. A pathway to legal status. What's the point at that point? If you're just going to put people to the front of the line, over top of people who have been here going through the process for years, it takes 9-10 years to become a legal citizen. What is the point? Policy-wise, these people are not very different. Bush and Clinton, not very different. And definitely not much different between Trump and Clinton. They're practically the same. In fact, Trump has donated to the Clinton Foundation, so literally funding his competition. So anyway, the concept of trying to decide who to vote for, you have to have a reason to vote for, other than just having an R or a D next to their name. What is the reason? I personally don't believe that if Donald Trump comes into the presidency, I don't think that there will be any difference if we get him or Hillary. And I don't think this country can withstand another progressive in the office. So we're talking progressive policies, and we'll get into their policies. I'm going to try to break some of these down in a minute. But I don't think that we can tolerate this anymore. I just don't think this country can handle more years of progressive policies. Obama said he wanted to fundamentally change America. He's working on it, piece by piece. Taking away our liberty, increasing the federal Leviathan, sprouting more heads in the Hydra. It's becoming a scary time to be alive when you consider individual liberty. So when you're looking at these presidential primaries and then you get to the actual election, how many people will stay home? I know many people did when they were voting for Mitt Romney and John McCain. Can we please stop getting these lukewarm candidates? Please, GOP, please. The last time you put out a bold candidate, Ronald Reagan, guess what? He won. Can we try that again, please? Can we please try that again? Instead of compromising to these lukewarm characters, these lukewarm people who don't stand for principles, they stand for compromise. And it's one thing to compromise on an issue. You know, what do you want the walls to be painted in your home? Blue or red? You know, well, okay, that's not really that big of a deal. But they want you to compromise on fundamental principles. Your right to keep and bear arms. Your right to defend yourself and your family. You can't compromise on that. You just can't. If you compromise on core beliefs, you compromise everything you're standing for. And what's the point at this point in voting for somebody who's going to compromise everything that they stand for? Do not compromise on core beliefs. So we need to have a clear difference. That's why I've been advocating that, you know, it would be great. I would love to see Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders running for the presidency. That would be the best. That would be the best. We'd have a clear division. We got Ted Cruz, conservative values, constitutional principles, little libertarian sprinkled in there. And in addition, he's a very smart and I think very effective orator. He knows the issues, and we'd be able to have him articulate them. Not be with a bullhorn, not being the loudest voice in the room, but logically and reasonably in a way that Americans can understand. We don't need a Donald Trump, that's for sure. And I'd love to hear Bernie Sanders try to out-talk Ted Cruz on the issue. I just don't. He's been in government for a long time, but I don't think he has the mental capacity or orating ability to do so. Anyway, let's go ahead and go back to this clip of Ronald Reagan talking about bold colors.
Between the two parties. I think they're basically wrong, but I think this is also an indication of what our answer should be to those who would make us more like the opponents. I am a convert to republicanism. I spent most of my adult life as a Democrat, and I can testify that when I found I could no longer follow the leadership of the Democratic Party, I became a Republican not because the parties were the same, but precisely because they were different. More than half of those who didn't vote have been polled and say it no longer makes any difference which party wins. Now some have taken another course. There are some among us, and I respect their views, who suggest that that means an end to the Republican Party, that we should form a new third party. May I suggest an alternative to that? Let's have a new first party, a Republican Party raising a banner of bold colors, no pale pastels, a banner instantly recognizable as standing for certain values which will not be compromised. Yes, we must broaden our base, but let's broaden it the way we did in 1972. Because those Americans, Democrats and Independents and Republicans, are still out there looking for a banner around which to rally. And we have what they want, what they're seeking. But they don't know that. And sometimes I wonder if we know it. Young people, your own companions, I'm told, are registering either Democrat or Independent, avoiding us in overwhelming numbers. Well, is this because of what we represent or what they think we represent? I know that in a poll of 35,000 college and university students, 80% of them said they wanted more individual freedom, less interference by government in their private lives. Well, isn't that what we want?
This is an excellent point. You know, the Republican Party is supposed to be for individual liberty. However, in recent years, we've come to realize that crony corporatism is coming from this party in a lot of ways, as well as the Democrats. Don't get me wrong; the Republicans are not the only ones guilty of this. But you know, we've been portrayed, this party, and I use we, I guess metaphorically, because again, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a Republican. I am a libertarian, small L, with some conservative leanings. So, but when we're talking about what people think that the Republican Party is, they think that it's, you know, this old white guys who are racist and they're bigots and they want to take away women's right to choose what they can do with their body. They want to have the government involved in your life and tell you what you can put into your body as far as drugs and things along those lines. So yeah, you know, the message is getting taken away. However, we're supposed to be, again, not me, the Republicans are supposed to be the party of small government. So the party of big government can't help but be argued that it's the party of the Democrats. They're the party of statists and socialists. You know, it's impossible for you to really differentiate what the difference between a socialist and a Democrat is now. And in fact, they have one of their candidates running right now. One of their nominees is Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders is a avowed socialist. He admits it. He's a socialist. So I think this is a question that should be asked to the Democrat Party, is what's the difference between a socialist and a Democrat? Can they explain it? I don't think that they'd have a very easy time doing that, but I digress. You know, Ronald Reagan continues.
Our banner should also proclaim our faith in the marketplace as the greatest provider for our people, and that we will eliminate needless regulations and restrictions that keep the marketplace from being able to provide the jobs our people need. And on that subject, let us also proclaim compassion for those who, through no fault of their own, cannot provide for themselves. See that their needs are fully met. But at the same time, let us say that all those who are able-bodied will be given an opportunity to work for their welfare grants. We will not make them lifetime recipients of a dole as clients of an ever-growing welfare bureaucracy. We must extend our compassion to that great group of unsung heroes, the working men and women of this country who ask nothing of government but to be left alone. They make the whole system work, but for a long time they haven't been fairly represented in government. Today they see themselves falling further and further behind, unable to afford the good life they've earned and deserved. Political demagogues for the last 4 decades have been appealing to the worst in us, the cupidity and selfishness of human nature. They've been telling us that each one of us can have a bigger slice of pie, but we have to help them take it away from someone else who's getting too big a share. Well, I think it's time for us to tell those political demagogues we can all have a bigger slice of pie if government will get out of the way and let the free enterprise system bake a bigger pie. James Burnham has said that even the most skillful surgeon, when operating on a Democratic politician, cannot separate demagogic from solid tissue without causing the death of the patient. Can anyone say that the banner that I presented so far does not represent what has been typical Republican philosophy, but does it not also represent what the people of this country, in an overwhelming majority, desire for themselves and the country today? Our party must stand for the traditional belief in a federation of sovereign states, of local autonomy and individual freedom. We didn't seek on the world scene the leadership that has been thrust upon us, but we can't abdicate that leadership without advocating our ability to keep the peace. We have seen in recent months little men with little minds in Washington tarnish our shield and rob us of credibility throughout the world. Make it plain to every friend and foe alike, every nation, that we will join any in seeking peace, but we will keep our commitments and we will not give away freedom not ours to give, nor will we sacrifice our own freedom. We will indeed sacrifice to maintain that freedom and peace throughout the world. One last line I think we have room for on our banner. Let us add a line that says, as a pledge, that never again will young Americans be asked to fight and die for their country unless the goal is victory. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was Ronald Reagan. That's his bold color speech. You know, we need to have a candidate worth voting for. It's incredibly important. Otherwise, what's the point? If we're choosing between progressives and progressives, or Democrats and Democrat light, what's the point? If our choice is to choose between little men with little minds, as Ronald Reagan said, who think that they can control every single aspect of your life, or little men with little minds who think that they can control most of the aspects of your life. What is the point? Can we please have somebody put their foot down and say no? And I'm calling for the GOP to realize that this is the time. This is the time for them to stand up and say no. We need to actually have bold colors. Let's have a plan, or we can show that we're different. We are not progressives. We believe different things, and we believe in individual rights. I think people will flock to that banner. I think it holds true just as today, just as much as it did in the past with Ronald Reagan. Anyway, when we come back, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. We're going to be within the overdrive hour. We're going to cut to this a little bit, probably do about a half hour in the overdrive or so. I want to finish up the articles that we said that we were going to talk about. So, I'm going to talk about, actually, I found a clip here from Chris Matthews where he talks to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. This is the DNC chair, the Democrat National Convention chair, I believe, and she's the head of the Democrat Party, and he asked her to tell the difference between you and a socialist. So, anyway, we're going to cover that. We're going to cover a whole slew of other stuff. I want to talk about Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Jeb Bush, Donald Trump, kind of where I think, what I think about these people. And then I want to cover 2 hilarious new ways to protest. So you guys are going to want to miss these last segments. You're definitely going to want to stick around for this. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Natasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hi-oh! Welcome back. We're back here. We're going to talk shop. So first and foremost, we're talking about the bold colors. I believe that Ted Cruz represents the bold colors that Ronald Reagan spoke about. I believe that he right now, in my opinion, I'm a big fan of Ted Cruz right now. Now, there's still more time to hash things out. We still got the debates. I want to see how he does. Maybe some other people will hop in front of him as far as I'm concerned. But right now, I like Ted Cruz. I don't like his affiliation with the banks, through his wife. However, nobody's perfect. I don't think that we're going to be happy with any candidate that we have 100% of the time. There's always going to be something that you don't like about them. And granted, he's a politician. So also keep in mind, anybody who wants power probably shouldn't get it. But again, we're choosing our masters essentially here. We're choosing our overlords to govern us. So I think that Ted Cruz represents somebody who at least will consider himself restrained by the Constitution. I would love to see how he does in office. I think that he would make a good president, but we'll see. I don't know. Anyway, so Ted Cruz, I think he does represent these bold differences. I think Rand Paul also could potentially represent bold differences. And I think people will, if they see these options at the voting booth, it will absolutely cause people to get off their butts and go vote. Now, very, very, very few people, I would say, in the grassroots department would feel passionate about a Jeb Bush or Donald Trump presidency. I think many people would be like, oh, well, he made it. It's better than a Democrat. I guess I have to vote for him. But why is the grassroots always the ones that have to make these compromises? We're supposed to always appease the middle. We always are supposed to appease the middle. And I don't think that's an effective way. I think history has proven time and time again that it's not an effective way. And it also, the last time that we actually put our principles and our money where our mouth is, it worked out. I mean, for example, Bush, all right, both the Bushes, both of them are pretty much progressive in policies. Bush Sr., I would say more so than Bush Jr., but maybe I'm wrong. I haven't broken down an analysis of both of their policies, but I know that they were progressives and they were not conservatives by any means. They were middle of the road, lukewarm candidates. But I digress. Anyway, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, they actually have a big divide between the establishment GOP and where many of the grassroots people go. So why can't the grassroots win? Why can't we be the ones that win and actually get somebody that we want to vote for? That way it will make the grassroots activate, bring more people to our banner that were kind of on the fence and didn't really know. I mean, if you have a decision between a progressive and a real progressive, like a Democrat progressive, a socialist, yeah, maybe why not go the full Monty, so to speak? To me, it doesn't make sense why we want a Democrat light. There's already a Democrat running. Why are we going to try to be just a little lighter version of that? Let's go with the bold colors and follow the principles that we believe in. How about middle? You compromise? How about you decide that, well, it is a Republican, and I typically always vote for Republicans, so, I don't necessarily like Ted Cruz, but I don't want to vote for a Democrat. Okay, if that's the case, let's do it that way. Why can't they compromise? I think this way has historically proven to be a way of working for the Republicans to actually get people to vote. And number two, hasn't been working what we've been doing so far. I keep saying we. But what they've been doing, what the GOP has been doing, has not been effective. They put McCain in, lackluster at the polls. They put Mitt Romney in, lackluster at the polls. Nobody wants to vote for these people. Nobody's passionate about voting for these people. Maybe I'm generalizing when I say nobody. Some people are. Unfortunately for us, some people are. However, the vast majority of grassroots don't really care about these candidates. So again, I've talked roughly, some of the things about Rand Paul and Ted Cruz. Again, Ted Cruz, conservative. He's got some libertarian sprinkled in him. I like his stance on the border, and I think that granted, I have some disagreements with it, but I think that it's important that we lock up people who are committing crimes, and I like the fact that he's been illustrating that with the ICE hearing, the immigration hearing that was conducted. He illustrated how many illegal immigrants who were or not necessarily convicted, but have done some kind of violation of a law. They participated in a crime. Murderers, rapists, drunk drivers, 104,000 of them released by this administration last year. 104,000 of them released back onto the street. They already violated one law, which was coming here illegally, and then they violated other laws on top of that. So I like the fact that he's highlighting that conversation, and he's doing so in a way that's better than Trump, other than just being a loudmouth and saying the wrong thing. I like that. In addition, I like his stance regarding individual rights and liberty, Second Amendment. I think that he's a very, very smart man. And I like the fact that he can hold his own in a debate. I mean, more than hold his own, he can pretty much dominate. I've watched him have arguments with CNN hosts and MSNBC crazy people on there trying to talk about the issues, and he shuts them down left and right. The man knows where he's coming from. Rand Paul, on the other hand, libertarian. He's the closest to a libertarian we got. And, you know, though I disagree with him regarding his endorsement of Mitch McConnell and Mitch McConnell's subsequent endorsement of him as well, which means that they both support each other's policies. If you endorse somebody, you support their policies. And though I disagree with Rand Paul's essential political game that he's doing with Mitch McConnell and the GOP establishment types, I think that he's a much, much better on principle and paper and the things that he says candidate for the presidency than these other progressives that we'll get to in here in a moment. If I had a choice between Rand Paul or Hillary Clinton, of course I'm going to vote for Rand Paul. Of course. Now, if I'm voting between Jeb Bush, Hillary Clinton, I'd be looking at a third-party candidate. We just had one of them on, Steve Kerbel. I liked what he was saying. I mean, I think the things that he said, too, are just common sense. I mean, it just feels good. When you hear these kind of ideas, this kind of talk of liberty, it just sounds good. Who could be against it? Who could be against somebody wanting to have the right to defend themselves? Who could be against somebody wanting to keep the government from tapping into their phone, data mining useless information to them that they themselves say, oh, we're not interested in it, but what do you got to hide? Well, why do you need to treat us like we're a criminal, even though you have no reasonable suspicion or probable cause that we've committed a crime? You're just searching our records without a warrant, using a general warrant, essentially, to... By the way, they didn't even have a warrant before. Now they do. Now they get warrants for Verizon. Now this is underneath the new rules for the Patriot Act. This is what they're going to have to get, a warrant for Verizon or these other telecom companies to get the metadata. But they weren't even getting that before, so they just seized the information. I digress. I don't want to get too far into this. But, again, third-party candidates, pretty good. They sound pretty good to me, you know? And when compared to, like I said, progressive light or progressive, who are you going to vote for? Who are you going to vote for? Is it going to make you want to go out to vote? And then a lot of people think that libertarians or other third parties, they're what's the point? No one's going to win, you know? Well, my question to you is, what's the point if we get a Jeb Bush in office? What's the point? There's not going to be any difference. There will be zero difference between him and Hillary. Very, very, very few differences at that. So why even bother? Why even bother wasting our vote on the Republican Party for that? Why not just vote for Libertarian? And I'm telling you, I will. If there's a Jeb Bush in the office, I will. As I said, he supports, which is essentially amnesty. It's a pathway to legal status. Not a pathway to citizenship, but it's amnesty. It's slightly to the right of amnesty. Donald Trump, on the other hand, which people are saying, oh, he's so tough on the border. Oh, he's so tough on the border. Not tough on the border. He's actually for a pathway to citizenship. He's for essentially universal health care, the government providing you with health care, subsidized medicine, redistribution of wealth. He's for a wealth tax, taking money out of your bank account and giving it to other groups who he thinks deserves it better. He's for eminent domain, used it in the past to steal private property for his development deals. Big fan of that. He's also an egomaniac. He's all about the Trump. All about the Trump, baby. I'm horrible at my Trump accent. I gotta work on that. I apologize. But again, he's also donated to the slush fund, the Clinton Foundation, $100,000. He's literally donated to his own competition. This is supposed to be a conservative beacon. This is somebody who's tough on the border for amnesty, pathway to citizenship. Donated to his competition. Again, this is slush fund, Hillary Clinton's Clinton Foundation. They use this to pay the wages of their people who work for their campaign. They pay salaries out of this. Their lavish expenses for travels, things along those lines. Also, it's used to basically give bribes to the Clintons. You know, so when Hillary Clinton was in the State Department, when she was head of the State Department, she was getting money from the Saudis through her husband. They were paying her husband into the Clinton Foundation. It's a bribe. She just literally received a bribe from a foreign government while serving in our government. In addition, if we're talking about Hillary, let's talk about the emails. So Donald Trump donated to this woman. He says, I give money to everybody. I'm so rich. I'm the richest man. I gotta wipe my butt with $100 bills. That's how rich he is. I'm Trump. Trump, baby, yeah. Look, we don't need this guy. He's a progressive. He's actually more to the left than Jeb Bush, which is saying something. We need bold colors. We don't need these people. So, let's move on to something a little lighter here. I want to talk about a story that I've ran across here this week, and actually, you know what? Before I do this, before we get to the ways of protesting, I forgot. We got Chris Matthews on MSNB Crazy, and they're talking about with the DNC chair. This is Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and Matthews, I think, accidentally stumbles upon something particularly interesting. He asks Debbie Wasserman Schultz, what's the difference between you and a socialist? What's the difference between Democrats and socialists? And this is a question that I think needs to be asked more often to Democrats. So let's hear what she had to say.
The American people are with Democrats.
Okay.
They want to make sure that the President of the United States...
Do you want to see Bernie Sanders...
not about me
Okay, do you want to see
representing the
Bernie Sanders speak at the Democratic Convention, win or lose? You want to have him up there on the stage as a socialist representing the Democratic Party? Do you want him up there?
Okay, so the question, do you think that a socialist should be representing the Democratic Party? Do you want him up there? This is the head of the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Bernie Sanders...
You want him on the floor of the
Bernie
convention?
Sanders has been a good
Should
Democrat.
he speak?
Caucuses with the Democrats. Of course he should speak.
Speak in prime time.
He should speak at the Democratic
In prime
Convention.
time, with everybody watching.
I think there may actually be something wrong with Chris Matthews because, first of all, he's pressing on this. Should he speak? Yes, he should. In prime time? Yes, he should. But, I think that they don't want Sanders to actually get the nomination, first of all. I don't think that they do, and I think that they, like I said, even Hillary Clinton, I think she thinks she's owed this. Now, I'm of the opinion that I think that there may be a potential for somebody else to step in here, like, I don't know. Let's see. What other candidates could really get it done, Democrat-wise? Maybe Al Gore. Al Gore, if he came in. Joe Biden, I don't think he's a serious candidate. If he steps into the race, which, by the way, I don't know if he did. I think I heard a rumor that he did. I don't know if that's true or not. But if he did actually step into the race, I mean, he's a joke. I don't think he could do it. But let's get back to this, and then I'll talk about why Joe Biden's a joke.
Bernie Sanders represents we are a big tent
So the
party.
answer is yes.
I did. I said yes. I can say yes again.
But in prime time.
I don't know what time he should speak.
Oh, maybe when nobody's watching, you mean?
No. Of course Bernie Sanders should speak. He should speak in a slot where the appeal that he has across the board, the progressive, populist message that he has,
She didn't say anything about socialist.
that resonates deeply and widely with the American people, not just with Democrats. Absolutely, that should be featured. The difference between us and the Republicans is that we really are a big tent party.
Okay, so she mentions the difference between them and the Republicans. So the Democrats and the Republicans, and as far as the core values that the Republicans believe in, yeah, there is a big difference. But when you start talking about these moderate Jeb Bush, it's not a very big difference. Not a big difference between Trump, Bush, Hillary. Not a big difference. Not a huge difference anyway. So I think Chris Matthews stumbles upon this accidentally. Here he goes.
What is the difference between a Democrat and a socialist? I used to think there was a big difference. What do you think it is?
The difference between
a Democrat like Hillary Clinton and a socialist like Bernie Sanders.
What's the difference between being a Democrat and being a Republican?
Ooh, couldn't answer it. The more important question is, what's the difference between being a Democrat and being a Republican?
What's the big difference between a Democrat and a socialist? You're chairman of the Democratic Party. Tell me the difference between you and a socialist.
The relevant debate that we'll be having over the course of this campaign is what's the difference between a Democrat and a Republican?
I think there's a huge difference.
American people,
he just tried to save her basically. I think there's a big difference. But again, they can't explain it. Try to explain the difference. What is the difference between a socialist and a Democrat? Let's see. Okay, well, a socialist, let's see, they for a very big government control, and yeah, that's exactly what the Democrats are. And this is the kind of, you can't ask this question. They should ask every single candidate in the Democrat National Party, all right, in the Democrat Party, what is the difference? This should be the first question. And I'm so tired of people coming up to Ted Cruz or Rand Paul and saying, hey, instead of talking about Rand Paul's 14% tax policy, which tax across the board 14%, no exemption for companies, everybody gets 14% of a tax all across the board. Amazing plan. Nobody's talking about it. Instead, they approach him, hey, what do you think about what Donald Trump said? Okay, I think when they're approached with that, they should, because, for example, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I think, is a horrible spokesperson. She's a complete radical nut job. She said that the Democrat National Party, I believe her words, if I'm remembering correctly, were that they support abortion in the third trimester. You're talking about something that most Americans do not support. Like 80-90% of Americans don't support abortion past the second trimester, I believe. I know definitely into the third trimester, 80-90% disagree with that. But she said that as long as it's inside the body, essentially, the Democrat Party supports it. That's her words. I mean, this is radical. And this is coming from Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So I think that every time somebody is approached by by a reporter asking them about Donald Trump, they should ask, hey, have Debbie Wasserman Schultz tell us what the difference between a socialist and a Democrat is. I challenge you to give me that answer, because you can't give a difference. The only thing you can say is maybe the spelling. The spelling is different. Think of one policy that the Democrats are calling for now that is not inherently socialist. And if you don't know what socialism is, I highly recommend that you look it up. And socialism, in turn, is actually a very close step to communism. It's very important that we have this conversation. I think it's very important that we don't allow the left to control the narrative. If they start asking us about candidates that they want to be in the news because they want loudmouths like Donald Trump to be in the news. That's why they have a fascination with interviewing him and covering anything that he says. They want him to they want to give him enough rope to hang himself and the party. And when he's out there talking and blabbing on about how he's going to build a fence and send the bill to Mexico, all he's doing is making the Republican Party look bad. You're not standing on principles or policy. You're just spewing rhetoric, and it doesn't even matter. All you're doing is making the party look bad. I keep wanting to say us look bad, but I'm not a Republican. So anyway, I mentioned earlier why Joe Biden is not a serious contender for the presidency. All of the gaffes that he's had, he's had quite a few. I told one gentleman that was being honored at a big meeting or something, he said, why don't you stand up and take a bow? And the guy just so happens to be in a wheelchair. Lots and lots of gaffes. He's not a serious contender. No one would argue that this is a smart man. But I just want to play one clip here. I played Bernie Sanders singing the other day last week. So I want to play Joe Biden singing, and this is him singing The Villages.
The Villages, America's friendliest hometown. The Villages, America's friendliest hometown. The Villages. And he claims that he doesn't even drink. This is presumably Joe Biden drunk singing The Villages. But anyway, I just wanted to play this. I thought it was kind of funny. Not a serious contender. I don't think anyone would argue that this guy is a skilled politician. He's just, again, a shill for the party, and I digress. So let's move on to some other conversations here. I want to talk about these new ways to protest that I've discovered here. And this is not me, obviously. This is things I've heard in the news. So this is in the United Kingdom. This is, an article on hosted.ap.org. It's titled, Protesters Inhale Laughing Gas Outside of UK Parliament. This is August 1st, 2015.
Dozens of giggling demonstrators have inhaled laughing gas outside Britain's parliament to protest government plans to ban it and other legal highs. The Conservative government has announced a crackdown on psychoactive substances, drafting a bill to outlaw the sale of, for non-medical purposes, of mood-altering drugs, excluding alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine. The ban would include nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas, which is used as a dental anesthetic and also taken recreationally by weekend clubbers. So, laughing gas, obviously. So, I thought it would be hilarious. I thought this would be a funny thing to do. Would be to conduct a protest with helium instead of laughing gas. Helium. I think that would be hilarious. Imagine, everybody screaming with high-pitched voices. Hell no, we won't go. Hell no, we won't go. I think that's the best protesting method that we could have possibly come up with. I thought that would be hilarious. But I digress. I want to move to the next way, and I think this is the best protest I've ever seen. It's actually a counter-protest to the KKK at a rally. They were marching in the street, and without saying a word, without yelling in these KKK members' faces, without blocking the road, without physically harming anyone, without doing anything of the sort, one man took the steam out of the KKK's rally. And he did it the most interesting way possible. Here's the clip. So it's hard to take these people seriously when he's blowing what looks like I think it's a tuba alongside of them with the boom 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 boom. It is hilarious. So one more time.
And this is what stupid looks like.
Oh man, I love this. This has to be the best counter protest ever. One guy totally just took the wind out of their sails, screwed up the whole protest with his counter protest. I love it. It's hard to take hateful bigots seriously when they're walking down the street to this anthem. So good on you. Good on you. I'm all about looking for new ways to protest. Not too long ago I found an article, and I can't remember where it came from now, but I think it's important to mention. We talk about the police state all the time, and in this article, one way that these people were protesting against the law enforcement officers that were out there basically herding and corralling the protesters around and their riot gear and things along those lines. These are peaceful protesters, apparently. I'm not in this situation, and I'm not even specifically talking about that one in particular, but this is a great method that they used to get these police officers to see what they were seeing of them. All the protesters were holding up mirrors pointed back at the police officers, and they could see themselves in the riot gear. They could see themselves standing as a wall against peaceful protesters. I think that's an excellent way to protest. Honestly, I think that's pretty awesome. Let them see what they look like. Let them see what they've become. So, anyway, that's our show, I think. I think we covered everything. Yeah, we did. There's some other topics I want to get to. I just want to briefly mention it here. We're going to go ahead and take off, but I want to mention this one last thing. For those of you who aren't aware, I highly recommend you go to YouTube and type in General Wesley Clark calls for internment camps. There is now a call openly being spoken about internment camps for us. We don't have time to get to it today, but basically, I'll boil it down. He's calling, and this is a former general, he's calling for people who are disloyal to America to be locked away in World War II style internment camps. Very scary thought. Very scary thought indeed. I highly recommend that you guys check out this video and see it for yourself. General Wesley Clark calls for internment camps. These kind of threats need to be taken seriously. Otherwise, we'll see the same kind of things happen in World War II, which we know through the prism of history was wrong and evil and abhorrent. And our government has since apologized for this. I find it amazing that somebody would dare call for internment camps of citizens of this country again. Again, all under the guise of national security. With that said, that's today's show. I want to thank you guys, our listeners, for tuning in week after week. You guys are the tip of the spear, the reason why we do this. And I just want to say thank you. I really do appreciate your continued support. You guys are awesome. I've enjoyed, my time that I've gotten to get to know you guys, and I consider you guys, family, extended family. So don't forget to tune in next week. We broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For those of you who aren't aware, we simulcast the first hour of the program on the 405media.com. And here's some news. We're in some talks with LibertyTalk.fm to be getting syndicated over there as well. So feel free to give them a shout, LibertyTalk.fm. Also, don't forget to check us out on our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. Follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.